Couple of days later at the facility. After receiving a phone call that a meeting has been arranged, I wait until my shift is over and head to the facility. The guard on duty barely glances at my agency card before leading me inside and pointing out the way to the meeting room. I stride down the hallway, rubbing at my arms as the chill of being underground seeps through my clothing. Eventually, I make it to a green painted door that looks like it could withstand an explosion and push it open to head inside. Unit Bravo and Rebecca are already waiting for me. With a nod of greeting at them, my gaze seeks the bright lit, bare walled square room in search of a familiar face. Farah smiles at me as soon as our eyes meet, shifting to sit straighter in her chair and leaning on the metal table. I'm glad you could make it, Jules, my mother announces while offering me a small smile of welcome. Now we can begin the meeting. You can sit by me, Farah says, patting the empty seat she's obviously been saving for me. I barely hold back a smile before moving to take the chair. I've detailed the Ma Aluset's requests to my superiors, Rebecca begins. Their demands, you mean? Ava snipes while drawing her shoulders back. Rebecca shakes her head, the smallest amount, only perceptible by the way her strands of light brown hair shimmer around her face. My superiors have agreed with the stipulation that all those affected by the disease are cured, something which is, thankfully, within the Ma Aluset's power. Trained agency negotiators will now take over discussions, though we may need you to gather some details from the Ma Aluzet in a more informal setting to help put them at ease before this can begin. What details? I ask. She stands straight. Details on their race and any abilities they may have, as well as any information they are willing to give on individuals within their group. It would help us place them into tiers if ever needed. A frown settles on my face. Tiers? Ah, of course, I forgot you wouldn't know. She replies with another shake of her head. Regret stains her features, wrinkling her nose and around her eyes. Go away, steam. Thing. Tiers are the way in which we categorize an individual's power, Nat explains. She grabs a nearby pad of paper and draws a perfect triangle on it. She then cuts the triangle into 11 slices, the one at the bottom being the largest and the one at the top incredibly small. She places a number in each. The biggest slice at the base is numbered 1, the next 2 all the way up through 10, until she places an X in the smallest triangle at the top. This is tier 1, Nat says, pointing to the bottom layer. Those in this tier would be classified as the weakest. Most humans would fit into this category. Their abilities and strengths are what we use as a base to judge a supernatural's power. It's the most common tier, which is why it's so big. Ava steps towards the diagram. Tier 2 is full of supernaturals who are generally twice as strong as humans, especially within their most powerful specific ability. And also humans who are exceptional or have abilities beyond what the average human has, Nat says. Like Agent Langford, Ava states, glancing behind to Rebecca, who gives a nod. Tier 3 is 3 times as strong, 4 is 4, etc. Nat continues. When you reach Tier 7 is when things get a little more tricky. I sigh, rubbing a hand over the back of my neck as I try to take in yet more information. Why tricky? Ava and Nat glance at each other. They aren't just 7 times as strong, Morgan interjects when the others don't answer. No, they tend to vary in power. Nat draws a doodle of a vine of leaves on the paper as she speaks. From tier 7 up, power is much greater and sometimes harder to judge. So, what about that tier? I point a finger to the small triangle at the very top of the pyramid above tier 10. Tier X? That is a rarity reserved for those whose powers don't seem to have a limit, or for those who have been undefined in their strength, Rebecca says simply. I lean back to stare over the group of vampires. So, what tiers are you all in? It had to be asked. Once again, Nat and Ava share an uncertain look, one where a lot is spoken but nothing decided on. Bra doesn't seem to have the same worries. I'm tier 6, she announces before sending a small flurry of hits into the air in front of herself. Mainly for my speed and agility. You might not want to brag about being so quick, Morgan quips with a dark chuckle. Especially to them. Not everything should end so fast. Bra turns to Morgan with a scowl. And what about you? I ask, seeing as Morgan has drawn attention to herself. She raises her lips in a lazy smile. X. All those pheromones, eh? Bra says, to which Morgan nods. My gaze shifts to Ava and Nat. I'm tier X as well, Ava replies on a heavy breath. With all those muscles, I bet you can't guess what. Wait, that's Farah. With all those muscles, I bet you can't guess what for. Plus, she's super old, and that always gives the supernatural more power. Rod jokes with a grin. Ava rolls her eyes. And then there's special little Natkins. Rob purrs, switching her gem-colored gaze like a spotlight onto Nat. Nat curls back in her chair. I watch her closer. Special? Nat gets 2 tiers, don't you? Rob prods. Nat frowns. Yes, but my general tier is tier 8 due to my healing abilities, and that's all we concern ourselves with. And her other one. Bra begins, but she's cut off by a growl from Ava. Bra, enough. Bra shrugs while frowning, genuinely confused. What? Jules should get to know us. It's not like they're going to leave the team anytime soon, is it? Ava doesn't seem convinced, but Nat nods at Bra. She's right. Her pen cuts a sudden, jagged, inky line through her doodle. My other tier is X. It's difficult to imagine someone with abilities that make them 4 times as strong as a human, so to suddenly realize the amount of power these vampires must have. Yep, we're nodding. I give a simple nod of understanding at all the information they've shared. My gaze takes in the diagram once again. It was a lot to take in, but it'll settle in my mind eventually. And what about my tier? I ask, glancing over the group again. Rebecca glides a step closer. From the tests we've managed to conduct on your blood as well as what we already know, her body hunches. Tier 3. My brows shoot up, impressed it's so high, higher than hers. Your blood's ability to power a supernatural is strong, but it's more due to your ability to resist a supernatural's psychic or mind-altering abilities. She nods. It's not an ability we've ever encountered, and one many seek. To think a mere human has the power to stop so many supernaturals, or to give them such strength. Fox's words echo inside my mind. Is something wrong, Detective? Nat asks, interrupting my heavy thoughts. I shake my head. It was just something Fox said the other night. The other night? He came to see you? Nat stutters. Hmm. Yeah, sure. I nod calmly at the question. He came to talk with me in my apartment. There shouldn't be anyone in your apartment you don't want there, Frost states with a frown. Can't we do something about that? We did only talk, I replied to help calm her worries. You didn't hurt me. What did he have to say? Rebecca asks with a tense hand held to her chin. He knew about me, about my blood, I think. I stare down at my hands. The leader of the rogue supernaturals. Leader? Rebecca and Ava ask in unison before a selection of concerned looks flicker around the room. Ava shakes her head. The rogue supernaturals have no leader. There aren't enough of them to congregate as a group. I lean back. Are you sure? He said she came to talk to him, to make him an offer. A confused, heavy quiet stifles the room for a moment. Considering this new information, it's lucky the agency has now given you license to carry agency-grade defensive weapons, Rebecca states as tension continues to crawl over the room. She looks less than pleased at learning about the Ma'alus said, but the frown unknots from her features after being there for less than a second. Finally, Morgan says under her breath. There's a collective wave of relief that overtakes the room at this news. Follow me, Jules, Rebecca says, gesturing to the doorway. I'll take you to the armory. I stand and then look back over at the group. We'll meet you at the entrance, Ava says, shifting forward a step farther beneath the bright light. She doesn't even flinch under the stark, blinding glare. It might be advisable for you to stay at the warehouse tonight in case Falk decides to make another sudden appearance. All right, meet you in a bit. I give a final nod of goodbye, then shuffle out of the door to trail behind Rebecca. In the armory. It's as stark in this room as it is in the rest of the facility. Clean, metal-paneled walls gleam at me as I walk inside. The floor is slippery under my boots. The white tiles are so shiny I can see my face staring back at me as I look down. Racks upon racks of tightly shut, padlocked, and, by the looks of it from the runes, magically sealed white cabinets line the walls of the narrow but long room. It feels disturbingly similar to walking down a very strange catwalk as I follow Rebecca through the corridor. She eventually draws to a stop at a small shelving unit, this one more like a covered display case. Her agency card slips into the hole on the front. She then punches in some odd-looking symbols on a number pad next to it. Finally, there's a faint hiss as the unit creeps open. She yanks up the lid and we both stare inside. A number of hand weapons are spread out like the pictures of a catalog. Here, Rebecca says, grabbing up a small spray can. This is DMB. I haven't found a supernatural yet it doesn't work on, so this is a safe bet for you to carry. I weighed a small carton in my hand, the metal casing of it weirdly warm to the touch. What about those? I nod my head to the top shelf, where a row of stun guns sit. Ah, vaults, she explains while grabbing one down. She hands it to me without hesitation. They are technically stun guns, but they are infused with magic to give them an extra kick. The charge will travel a small distance, but you still need to be close to your target. It can also travel through liquids, so take that into consideration when using it. They're used on both supernaturals and humans. What about guns? I ask, not spotting any nearby. The closest to guns you'll find is our tranquilizer guns, but they are above your rank. She turns away with a frown. At least for now. The agency has a no-kill policy unless in dire circumstances, as well as the fact normal ballistic weaponry has little effect on supernaturals. That tends to mean other methods are favored here. Hmm. Uh, True. I arch a brow. I wonder just who gets to decide those dire circumstances. Usually the team leader during a mission, Rebecca explains, not picking up on my sarcastic tone. Having the no-kill policy was one of the stipulations laid out when Supernatural agreed to form the agency with humans. Supernaturals didn't want humans to have a life or death hold over their people. But only when it suits? We do our best with the situations we are placed into, she counters. I slip the vault and DMB away, shifting my jacket back in place after I'm done. Then I glance over to find my mother staring at me with sorrowful eyes. What is it? She shakes her head, brushing back a curl of loose hair behind her ear. For a moment there, you reminded me of Rook. No one ever uses my father's real name. Only Rook, like the chess piece, and I sometimes wonder if he even had an actual name. Apparently that was a habit started by his sister, a habit kept up by Rook's insistence after her death years before his. Guess it must have kept her alive in some way for him. This is the first opportunity Rebecca and I have had to talk alone since she first revealed that my father knew all about this world, and that he'd been Wayhaven's human liaison to the agency. I mean, I don't really care. I'm uninterested in bringing it up. My focus slides to the doorway. I should meet up with the others. She barely seems to hear me. Of course. In the hallways of the facility. Peering around the corner of one of the corridors, I let out a heavy breath. It looks just the same as all the others, which shouldn't come as a surprise by now, but it still doesn't help me navigate my way out. With a shrug, I figure I'll just have to follow my gut. I start down the concrete-lined tubular hallway with as much confidence as someone who's completely lost can manage. A clinical, all-too-clean smell lines the walls. Each colored pipe running the length of the corridor almost gleams under the false light with how scrubbed and polished they are. My mind wanders as I think about who must keep this place so immaculate and if I might hire them for the station. Then the pipes and concrete finally give way to a glass window. Behind it, a selection of patients lie unconscious in medical beds, and a group of supernatural and human medics fuss over them. In one of the beds lies Bobby. Her skin is still blistered with white boils, and blue streaks stain every inch of her arms, gradually seeping up her neck. Tubes and machines are piled around her, bleeping a steady rhythm, but they seem to show no signs of improvement for the patient. I guess she must have been with you when she was brought in. A soft, deep voice says from beside me suddenly. One of your friends? I glance to one side to see Elidor standing straight back next to me. His brown-eyed gaze stares through the window to Bobby inside. Not exactly, I say, letting my words and meaning hang in the air. Elidor lets out a soft but sharp breath. I see. Whatever she is to you, this disease has really taken hold. He looks at me with no small amount of seriousness. It has for all of these poor souls. Yeah, seems like it's getting desperate, I nod. Rumor has it that they can be cured by the people who inflicted the disease in the first place, but only if they sign the treaty. Elidor continues to look at me, searching my face in hope of a positive answer. I press my fingers to my lips. That's the idea. It's a big responsibility you're taking on right now. I'd like to help you, he states. How? His hair shimmers under the lights as he swings his head around to stare back into the room. My shift is nearly over, but I can stay and keep an extra eye on the woman if you'd like. That's something, at least. I mean, I doubt it's going to make a difference. Um, F. I don't know. Let's go with that, sure. It looks like enough is being done already, I say, gesturing to the bustle of nurses and medics in the room. Then I turn to Elidor with a nod. But thank you. As you say, please do keep yourself safe, Detective. I don't wish it to be you I'm treating here again. I give a brief wave. See you soon. He then turns on the spot to leave with a smile of goodbye. After a final glance at the medical room, I move off down the corridor to find the others. As I go, the agents who pass by barely take note of me, just scurrying on by to whatever jobs they are in the middle of. At the warehouse. Wayhaven in general is a peaceful town. Out in the middle of nowhere, fenced in by a wall of dense forest with no other towns nearby and only one road in and out. There's rarely much hustle and bustle outside of the people who live here. But the warehouse gives a new definition of peace. A gentle quietness pervades every inch of the converted warehouse. The only sounds nearby are the happy calls of birds in the trees outside and the gentle click tock of the carriage clock in the living room where we settle ourselves. Placing my overnight bag on the ground, I fall onto one of the sofas and enjoy the squishy comfort of its cushion. I'd stopped at my apartment for essentials before we'd made it here, all of us packed into my little car to get there. The image of Ava Farah and Morgan squashed and vying for space in the back seat will forever be a cherished memory. Farah flops down next to me on the seat. Uh, sure, whatever. Farah flops down on the seat beside me, her hand reaching out to rest on my upper thigh without her seeming to notice, as though it were a natural, casual reaction. I barely hold back a smile at the gesture. What? Farah asks with a grin, like in on some joke she has no clue about. I shake my head, lacing my fingers into hers on my leg. Nothing. She frowns at me a little in confusion, but then grins again and turns to the rest of the group. Her hand stays in place. The attention of both Ava and Nat falls to the touch, then to each other, then back to us. Nat breaks into a cheery smile. You two are. Fra almost vibrates with excitement beside me. Yep. There's a sharp hiss of breath behind us where Morgan has settled against one of the side tables. Finally. Ava doesn't seem as relieved or happy as the rest. She stares over at us for a moment longer, icy green eyes seeming to turn even colder before she turns away. But she then clears her throat to break the rising quiet. You're handling things well, Detective, Ava states out of the blue. Thanks, I reply, unsure if she's going to turn that into a backhanded compliment. She doesn't. How is it working with your mum? Ra asks. There's the smallest pain twinge to her words. You guys still seem pretty close, even after everything that's happened. We'll go with that. Although it seems kind of, you could think that there might be a slight, you know what? Forget it. I don't know how to express it. It's easier to form a good relationship with her without so many secrets, I explain. Ava tenses. Secrets are sometimes necessary. Even from family? The people who are supposed to be closest to you? I counter. She falls quiet at that. Family is important. I'm glad you're able to work on yours, Nat says, a smile on her lips, but uneasiness in her eyes. Fra grins. And anyway, this team is a family, so you'll always have us from now on, no matter what. The group of them all seem to inflate at the truth and obvious happiness in that statement, all except Morgan, who gives more of a resigned nod at the idea. And what does this family get up to in their time off? I ask, hoping to change the subject, but also satiating a growing curiosity. I only ever see them when we're in the middle of danger. Now that we have a house, who knows? Nat replies with a chuckle. We've always lived at some facility or other, Farai explains. This is the first real place that's all ours. I smile at her enthusiasm. And you're obviously enjoying it. Oh yeah, she exclaims, leaning back further into the seat. Then her expression sours. Except the chores. And the loud roommates, Morgan remarks. Hey, I'm not that loud. Farah retorts in a tone that's almost deafening. Morgan hunches closer to Farah. You play music with such a heavy beat that it makes my legs shake. Farah looks over at Morgan with a growing smile. That's because you need to loosen up. Then you wouldn't be so affected. Morgan sneers. I hope you're here as often as possible to join in the fun too, Jules. Farah comments, squeezing my hand a little as she smiles. I bet you are. Morgan scoffs. All you do is mooch about when they're not here. Farah clears her throat, a bashful smile replacing the grin from before. That's not exactly true, but thanks for that. At least we'll all know when things get to the serious stage. A smirk forms on Morgan's lips. The walls are thin in this place. We're gonna try to ignore Morgan's comment. Morgan! Nat yells, launching a small wooden ball ornament at her in reprimand. But Morgan catches the ornament easily, her thin smile only growing wider until her cigarette almost topples from her lips. I do my best to ignore the comments, even with the words seeming to hang in the air around us all. And a shattering of glass slices through the room and the cheery conversation. Flinching away from the torrent of sharp shards with a gasp, I raise my hands over my face, feeling the glass pierce the skin of my hands. Nothing too deep, but I let out a hiss of breath at the sting of it. When the storm of dagger-like shards settles, I glance over my raised arms to see the carpet and furniture glittering with glass. Every window of the living room has been blasted out of its frame. Plumes of thick grey smoke curl out of the holes where the windows once stood, making my mouth dry when I breathe in. Among the remnants stands the hunched, angered figures of Falk and some of his followers. He snarls over at me. You would dare to do such a thing. My gaze only has a second to take in the group's appearance. Their clothing is torn and burned, curling at the hems like the charred edges of a book. Their pale skin is bruised with soot, over which are stains of blood and wounds. The distinct grimace-inducing stench of singed hair and skin begins to invade the room. Dare to do what? I ask, scrambling to stand up and staring at the state of them. I don't even know what's going on. A strangled, tight laugh escapes his throat. You have the nerve to expect me to believe such a thing? Ava steps forward to my side. None of us know what has happened. You lie. His black-eyed scowl snaps back to me. As I should have known you would. And with a flick of his wrist, he signals his lackeys to advance. The three Ma'aluzid that had joined Falk limp and shuffle to encircle our group. The vampires and I shift into the center of the room with our backs together as we survey the scene. The Ma'aluzid are wavering, as though they might tip over in the slightest breeze. Not exactly in fighting shape, but they continue to creep towards us anyway. Falk keeps his distance, clutching at a wound which won't stop bleeding. He appears to be the worst off of them all. This situation has gotten wildly out of control, and I'm not even sure what the situation is, but whatever is happening, I know I have to deal with the immediate threat before figuring out what is really going on. This fight won't take long, if it even needs to be a fight at all. What happened? Ava makes a step towards the encroaching Ma'aluzid, but my hand whips out to hold her back. She stares at the touch, then at me in confusion. I ignore the look and instead keep my focus trained on the supernaturals. My eyes narrow as I really look at them. The charring to their skin is buried beneath the blood and wounds, suggesting that whatever fire had occurred happened before the fight which caused the wounding. Wounding that mostly consists of cuts across their forearms, defensive wounds. As I swing my head around to face the leader again, I notice a ripped and blackened strip of pink and white striped material that is clutched with reverence in Falk's grasp. There was a fire. Someone set fire to the carnival, I explained, letting my words trail in case I'm off the mark. But from Falk's deepening frown, I guess I hit right on the bullseye. Someone set a fire and then attacked you, I continue as the pieces begin to fall into place. There's a shocked intake of breath from behind me that I think comes from Nat. Someone? Falk scoffs. That someone was you and your agency. Nat steps up beside me. No, the agency would never use such tactics. We had no need to attack you when we already offered friendship. Falk's scowl softens by just a little. Doubt creeps over his long features before he shakes his head. If not you, then who? He snarls, but uncertainty creeps into the edges of his words. Ava's phone ringing cuts through the tension which had blanketed the room. Park throws us a final confused glance before shoving his allies through the floor-length mirror in the corner of the room. They're gone in a ripple of silver. Ava huffs out a breath before yanking her phone from her pocket in annoyance. Morning, Agent Dumotin. Well, that was unexpected, Farrar chimes in. Nat glances about the room in an almost caring way, seeming thankful that none of her precious furniture had been marred. Hey, what? Ava yells down the phone. That can't be good, Morgan comments. Next chapter.